Well, we are now 1 month into the 2025-2026 NBA calendar year, and up until this point, the Lakers have undergone plenty of changes. Now the main pieces have and probably will stay the same for them, including guys like LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, even Rui Hachimura. That will and probably should stay the same. However, the guys behind them and the rotation entirely is looking a whole lot different and actually a little bit better in my opinion. With additions like Marcus Smart, DeAndre Ayton, Jake LaRavia, even drafting a Due Theroux, I think they're able to cover up a few of their needs, and especially following the departure of Dorian Finney-Smith, they've done a decent job at that and filling a few of their holes from last season, with the primary one being a viable starting center. So with all of that in mind here, how is their team currently looking? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are the remaining needs they have to fill yet? I think that's important to talk about, so we're going to do that today. Talking about everything from their current strengths, what makes their team good, where their current weaknesses are and where they still need improvement, and simply about the direction and current build of their team at this current moment. So to begin, I think the most obvious strength of this team would have to be playmaking ability. I mean, already having LeBron and Austin Reeves prior to the Luka Doncic trade last season, even having guys like Gabe Vincent off the bench, who's not a terrible playmaker, but then following the addition of Luka Doncic, a top 5 point guard, top 5 point forward, playmaker in general in the entire NBA, now also adding Marcus Smart, who's a pretty decent playmaking option himself, the continual growth of Austin Reeves as kind of a secondary point guard option. I think playmaking ability is probably the number one thing you should and could point to with their team. Obviously, you have LeBron yet, who is one of the best passers in NBA history. I'm not buying the rumors that he'll be leaving, so yes, I'm going to count him in there too. And between their entire team, they have plenty of good and reliable playmaking options. So in my opinion, that's probably the number one thing you could point to with their team, their biggest strength, and likely something that will come in handy for head coach JJ Redick, drawing up different plays to their team, different offensive schemes, and different ways to take advantage of opponents' defenses. That's something that will be pretty handy for him and their entire team for that fact too. However, while playmaking is an obvious strength for their team, they definitely have a few weaknesses to talk about too. And in my opinion, one of them, and probably the biggest one, is a carryover from last season, that being big wing defense. And no, they don't have a lack of big wing defenders, they actually have a couple of them. The problem is that the entirety of them are not very playable. Number one being Jarred Vanderbilt, obviously a very good perimeter defender, a guy that can truly defend and switch 1 through 4 on the court. But the problem with him is that he's not entirely playable in every matchup, a borderline offensive liability, so he is limited to about 15 to 20 minutes per game, maybe a little bit in some games when he's shooting well or simply playing a bit better, but he definitely is a bit limited and can't be on the court for 30 plus minutes every game. Or even for a guy like a Due Theroux, I like that matchup, or rather that addition for their team. I think he definitely can match up with big wings and does have plenty of potential to do it, but much like Jarred Vanderbilt, not a great offensive player yet, isn't a good 3-point shooter yet, barring a sudden jump in 3-point shooting ability and him really developing that over the summer, he probably won't be a very viable option in the rotation. And then with guys like Rui Hachimura, not a great perimeter defender, a pretty poor wing defender, is pretty good at defending more physical power forwards, but that's kind of about it. And after that point, they have LeBron, who, plays pretty decent defense in the fourth quarter, but throughout the entirety of the game, he's not going to take on a tough matchup. Austin's not a great perimeter defender, isn't a big wing defender. Luka is a pretty good passing lane guy, but isn't a great one-on-one individual perimeter defender as well. And then maybe for Jake LaRavia, definitely hoping for him to have 3-and-D upside and maybe to really open some eyes this season, but he's not been a very reliable defensive option quite yet. Has shown plenty of good moments, and again, I like the upside with him, but I wouldn't call him a reliable option quite yet. So in my opinion, big wing defense is and was an issue for their team last season, and even with the addition of Marcus Smart, I don't think that was enough to fully address that need yet. I think if anything, that's kind of their last remaining and biggest need by far. A big wing defender, ideally a 3-and-D wing that can not only help them defensively, but also be playable and can't be played off the court offensively. But then moving back to a strength for this team, and I actually would point out their depth. I've seen people say that they have pretty bad depth and they didn't really do anything to address it, but I don't really agree with that. I mean, when you got guys like Dalton Knecht and even Maxi Kleber on the outside looking in with the rotation, kind of being their 10th, 11th, or possibly 12th man, That's definitely a good problem to have for your team. Even with a guy like Adou Thiero, I think he could be helpful in some matchups, and they probably really can't find consistent playing time for him because of their depth ahead of him. Again, with the additions of guys like Marcus Smart, DeAndre Ayton, Jake LaRavia, they're definitely going to be in the rotation and play plenty of minutes for their team. Then with the remaining players like Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, obviously Rui Hachimura, they're going to be in the rotation and even a part of the starting lineup. I think they actually have pretty good depth around LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and Austin Reeves. I mean, I for one even like the second year upside of guys like Christian Koloko and Bronny James. Koloko for one had good moments to their team last season, was even a part of the rotation for some time last season, prior to the trade deadline, and I'm not entirely sure why he fell out of it post-trade deadline when they traded one of the few viable options at the center position for their team, that being Anthony Davis. But now following a good summer league showing, following him getting another year to get right and recover from that blood clot and simply get comfortable on the court, I think he might be a decent third center for their team and might even find playing time in the rotation in some matchups too. Then for Bronny James, I know this might be a bit controversial, but I'm actually pretty hopeful with him. You know, maybe not this season to be a rotation player, but I think in the future he does have some good 3-and-D backcourt upside. Already has shown the ability to take on some pretty tough matchups on defense, is definitely athletic enough to play in the NBA, simply getting the 3-point shooting up to speed and the offensive ability in general. I think he might eventually be a viable option for the rotation, and he's actually showing some pretty rapid improvement too. So overall here, I definitely do like their depth. Now I'm not going to call them the deepest team in the NBA, not even close in my opinion, but I think following the departure of Dorian Finney-Smith, that opening up their non-taxpayer mid-level exception, them signing both DeAndre Ayton and Jake LaRavia with it, then signing Marcus Smart with their biannual exception, I think that was a pretty good trade for them to make. No, not an actual trade, but kind of trading one contract, Dorian Finney-Smith, for 3 viable rotation options and therefore improving their overall depth. But then moving back to a weakness for their team, and this is definitely one of the biggest, if not the biggest ones, definitely in regard to off the court and not a skill set problem, I'm talking about durability here. Unfortunately, if you're talking about pretty much half of their team and anyone but Austin Reeves, Gabe Vincent, Dalton Knecht, and actually LeBron last season, which isn't entirely a good thing given the fact that a 40-year-old is one of the healthiest and most durable players in your team last season, durability and health was definitely a problem for them, which unfortunately might be an issue that carries over. Hopefully not, and knock on wood here, but it definitely has been an issue for a few other guys. Talking about everyone from Luka Doncic, only playing 50 games last season, Marcus Smart, that's been a big issue for him lately, only playing 34 games last year, only 20 the year prior to that, only 54 in the past 2 years combined now, DeAndre Ayton only playing 40 games last year, historically has been fairly injury prone, so also something to watch with him. Obviously for a guy like Jared Vanderbilt, only playing 36 games last year, not hitting the 50 game mark in over 2 years now. Even for a guy like Jake LaRavia, yes, he did play a fair amount of games last season, nearly hitting the 70 game mark, but prior to last season had never played above 50 games, so is a minor issue for him as well. Obviously then for a guy like Maxi Kleber, only played 34 games last season and historically has been fairly injury prone as well, so pretty much half, if not over half the rotation, has been fairly injury prone throughout the past couple of years now. So hopefully that corrects itself, but it might be something to watch out for. Can't simply rely on LeBron, Luka, and or Austin to stay healthy. They need the guys behind them to stay healthy too. And with Gabe Vincent and Dalton Knecht being the only 2 role players that played above 70 games, that definitely is a bit of a red flag. However, I definitely believe there is reason to be optimistic. I mean, I know the narrative might say that they're an old team simply because LeBron's 40 going on 41, but apart from LeBron, Marcus Smart, and Maxi Kleber, they don't have a player on their entire roster over the age of 29. I mean, you got Luka Doncic, who's only just turned 26, Austin, who is 27, Hachimura even, who is 27. A majority of their core and really their entire team is 27 years old or younger, so theoretically they should be pretty fresh and should be able to stay healthy throughout a majority of the year. If they're actually committed and taking care of their bodies like they should be, it really shouldn't be a problem for their team. Especially with other guys like Marcus Smart and DeAndre Ayton coming from teams that were actually trying to tank. They probably could have and should have played more games than they actually did. So factoring that in here, now playing for a contender that's actually trying to win, plus the youth on their team and the upside of their team, I think it actually could be a strength for them. not a complete weakness or something to watch out for. I think barring the Marcus Smarts and DeAndre Ayton, who might have some issues here and there, they actually have plenty of reason to be optimistic with their health and durability going forward. No, we obviously can't or shouldn't ignore the durability and prior health issues of guys on their team, but with the added youth and with the upside with that youth, I think there's reason to be optimistic with their team too. But then for a final strength, and really a big one you can point to, one that's kind of being overlooked with their team, is the prior playoff background and playoff acumen on their team. Obviously with a guy like LeBron James, 4-time NBA champion, the most playoff minutes of all time, and definitely a guy that knows a thing or two about being in the playoffs. Even for Luka Doncic, obviously made it to the NBA Finals only a year ago, has plenty of playoff background, is a proven playoff performer. Obviously even guys like Austin Reeves has a good amount of playoff background, over 20 games of playoff experience. Same for Rui Hachimura, same for DeAndre Ayton, a guy that's also played in NBA Finals and played pretty well in that NBA Finals run. Then for Marcus Smart, has over 80 games of playoff background. Even somebody like Maxi Kleber, you might not think of him, but he has 45 games of playoff background, so plenty of playoff experience to point to with their team. Plenty of guys that actually have played better in the playoffs, like a Gabe Vincent for example. So I think it's actually a big strength that's not talked about too much with them. And the fact that they were the 3rd seed last season, combine that with the playoff experience and their team getting a bit more playoff viable, their entire rotation in my opinion, I think that's a definite strength for their team. And you know, I could really go on dissecting their team for literal hours at this point, talking about every little strength and weakness, but those are probably the main ones I'd point to. Everything from their health and durability, either you can point to that as a weakness for their team or potentially a long-term thing that could actually improve for their team. Their playmaking ability, that's their biggest strength in my opinion. Between Luka, LeBron, and Austin, you really can't ignore that. Their offensive versatility in general, you know, something I didn't directly mention, but the fact that they improved their rebounding ability with DeAndre Ayton, retaining Jackson Hayes, still having Jared Vanderbilt and other good rebounders in the team, improving their simply height and length at the center spot, their viability at the center spot, adding another lob threat with DeAndre Ayton, which is a very valuable thing for LeBron and Luka Doncic. Everything in between all that, you can point to it, but overall I think they improved their team. I think they improved their depth. I don't think they're quite perfect yet and do have a few moves on the margins. Again, primarily a 3-and-D wing. That's kind of my last remaining big need for their team. But overall, I'd say the roster looks very promising and I'm pretty optimistic with them going forward. But with all of that being said, what do you guys think? How do you feel about this current iteration of the Lakers roster? Where do you think they improved? Where do you think they still need improvement? And what moves do you think they should or will make going forward? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one. And if you enjoyed the video, then I would greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day or night.